Welcome to Stoked with Megan McPhail, the podcast that helps you get super effing jazzed about your work, life, and bank account. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become a seven-figure business coach, entrepreneur, and elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on inspiring others to do the same. Are you ready to say goodbye to the 9-to-5 grind and start going after some big, bold dreams? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail, and today we have a really special episode. I have a guest, Karen Castor, who is an elopement photographer based in Arizona. She pretty much just focuses on serving Sedona. She is a photography educator. She is a mom of two. She was also one of our Elopement Con speakers. So welcome to the podcast, Karen.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I would love to start this episode with your story because I think it's so powerful, especially being a mom of two kiddos. Will you tell us how you left your job at the post office and how you kind of pivoted into elopement photography?
Yeah, so I was doing photography on the side while working full-time for the post office. I got pregnant with my second child and we decided to move to Arizona. So when I was about 8 months pregnant, we moved here. I quit the post office. It was emotionally draining and I didn't enjoy it. I knew I wanted to pivot to elopement photography specifically because my husband and I eloped and I just loved adventuring and photography and mixing the two. Sounded amazing. I had no idea what I was doing though. And then I had my baby and I quickly realized we definitely needed my income because, living with two kids off of one income is really tough, especially after moving across the country.
Yeah.
So I joined the mastermind with you. And I focused on all the right things and I was able to start doing elopement photography full time without having to get a 9-to-5 job to supplement it. And I've been a full-time elopement photographer ever since.
I love that. And I would also love to kind of talk about in the middle of this transition into elopement photography, how you had two cancellations and you were this close to calling it quits. Can we share that story?
Yeah. So it was like a series of things that actually happened. So my husband, the job that we moved out here for ended up not really being very good for his mental health. And so he decided he wanted to quit. And we technically were not like financially stable enough for that decision, but we kind of determined that his mental health meant a lot more than, finances at the time. So he quit his job. And then the only two elopements I had on the books canceled on me and they actually wanted a refund on top of it. So I was super stressed and I was paying for the mastermind. And I remember I messaged you and I was like, hey, I need to quit. I might come back later, but things are hitting the fan right now. And I don't know what I'm going to do. We're running out of money so fast. And you're like, wait a minute, let's try this. And I remember I was so close to hitting the pivotal moment. I was doing all of the work. I was really diving into the homework and I was doing everything step by step. And I was probably, I think at the website part and you're don't give up. You're right there. And so
you're right there.
Yeah. So I did the website part and then we started running Google ads. And I just remember it was the last bit of my savings and you're just trust me. I was like, okay. And I did it. I gave my last bit of money to Google ads and I ended up booking. So the next 2 months, so that was in June. And then the next 2 months, July and August, I booked 13 elopements and we quickly reconvened everything. And those were for that year too. So it was for that fall, it happened that quickly. And that's where, shit hit the fan for me. The organization, because when you book that many all at once and you don't have a planning process, because I was just starting out, I had no idea. It kind of is what do I do? So.
Yeah. And a big part of our job is the planning process. And that's what our couples are paying us for, is that the expertise that we have in these locations and helping them bring their ideas to life. So you book 13 things really quickly. and you become a 6-figure elopement photographer your first year in business, which is freaking amazing. But then you have to plan all these elopements and, it's a mixed blessing.
It is. It is. And when you're not prepared to take on that many couples, it can show in your like confidence, and giving each couple the same experience can be a struggle. And then your business becomes super overwhelming. And then you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm not enjoying it anymore. And so,
yeah. Fast forward to this year.
Oh, yeah.
You just told me before we started recording that you're going to profit 6 figures this year.
Yeah.
And I got full body chills from that because that's my goal for everybody. And it's an amazing accomplishment. And you're doing that while just working like a few hours a day.
Yeah. I only work a few hours. I have my kids full time at home, especially right now in the summertime because my oldest is not in school right now. So I'm basically working a few hours here and there. And then during busy season, it picks up. I work a couple days a week.
Yeah. So you're working during nap times or whatever, just a few days a week, profiting 6 figures. So this is kind of our segue into how powerful it is to automate and streamline your whole planning process. So can you give us a rundown of how awesome your planning process is and how automated it is? Because you guys listening are going to be like, whoa, I need to up my game.
Yeah, so I start with the inquiry, actually. So that is even automated for me. So when a couple fills out the inquiry form, they automatically get transferred to my calendar link page to schedule a call instead of a thank you page. So I think a lot of photographers have the thank you page. Mine is like the calendar. It's like, book your call right now. So that normally means like I'm one of the first people they talk to. And then I have an automated email that's like, I can't wait to chat. Here's all the information. Here's some inspiration. Here's my pricing. If you have any questions, otherwise I'll talk to you on the call. And so I don't do like any work at all after they inquire. We hop on the call, and the call usually is just like focused on them and everything. And then if they want to book, I do their like contract and invoice, which I have as a template, super easy to just put together and then send. It takes me like less than 2 minutes, I think. And then once that is signed and the retainer is paid, they automatically get my elopement planning guide and then like a prep email of like what to expect the next phases. So they're not left wondering, what's next. And then a week later, I send them the questionnaire. So that'll give me an idea of what locations to show them, what they want to do, how their timeline might play out and stuff like that. And then we have, when they submit that, is another automated email. So up until this point, I'm doing zero work, like nothing. They fill out the questionnaire, and then after that is my call calendar link again, and they schedule the call, and then we hop on that call. So I prep a little bit, and since most of my elopements are in Sedona, the prep is very easy for me and doesn't take much time. I just go over their questionnaire. I'm like, yep, they would like these ones. So I show them those locations. And then when they decide, yes, I really love those, I have the guides to send them already because I go there so often. So like that's automatically sent afterwards as well. And then the next phase is like the timeline call, which that email goes automatically to them and they schedule it on their own time. We hop on the call. So far I've done 2 calls and sent them a guide, which that took me less than 30 seconds. And so, and then they have one final questionnaire that's automated as well. And then I like to sprinkle in little planning information. So that's kind of like the foundation workflow. And then on top of that, I sprinkle in a little bit of like what to pack or a little checklist here and there, or like how to travel with this, like helpful things that just get sprinkled throughout the whole time that we're planning. And really the only like time we're communicating is like through text, which I have plenty of time for and patience for now, because that's really the only time I'm connecting or talking with them other than those calls.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a lot of people probably think that by automating your workflow, you're taking away the personalization of it. But really what it's doing is taking so much work off your plate that you're happy to get a text message. I mean, how many photographers can say that? Most photographers are like, oh my God, my couple texted me a question. I can't handle this right now, And you're like, oh yeah, let's talk, like, let's look at your wedding dress. Or,
I will say that like if you make your workflow really well, they shouldn't really have very many questions. So you're like
Mm-hmm.
eliminating that. And then you just really talk about the fun stuff like, hey, do you like my dress? Or hey, this came in, look
Mm-hmm.
at these flowers and all this stuff. And like the fun stuff, really.
Yeah.
And that's where the connection builds versus like answering their questions. I feel like the connection doesn't build as fast.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of like treat them like you're their little bridesmaid or their best man in their wedding. Like that kind of like
Mm-hmm.
group chat texting is what really builds your connection.
I love that so much because I think, yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that because you've taken so much of the busy work off your plate that you just get to have fun in your business, you get to have a good time,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And you're saving probably hundreds of hours of work
Yeah.
a year, and you get to hang with your kids, you get to hang with your husband,
Mhm.
and your couples are probably, because you're answering their questions before they even really have them, or like solving their problems before they even really know it's a problem. You're like always giving them what the next step is, that they probably just love the whole process,
They
right? I
do,
mean,
yeah.
what are your reviews like?
Well, honestly, I hear about it before they even see their pictures usually. So, usually at like the end of the day or end of the elopement day, they just rant and rave about how easy the process was and how helpful I was and how the day ended up being so perfect and they can't thank me enough. And like, they're so happy to be working with me and they haven't even seen a single photo yet. That's usually how it goes. It makes me so happy when couples feel that way at the end of their day. And then it's like whatever photos I send them, they're in love with because they have such a positive experience connected to it.
I love that so much. Our job isn't just as photographers. We
Mhm.
really are bringing their dreams to life and like doing it in an organized way that makes the couples feel seen and heard and taken care of. And that's really important in this line of work, that we're not just another vendor. We're creating friends with them. You said you're like their bridesmaid or best man or something. You got a group text going on. Like, yeah, your business gets to be fun. It doesn't have to be busy work and hustling and hours behind your computer. You get to live life on
Exactly.
top of it, which
Yeah.
is great.
Your business shouldn't be overwhelming. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More people got to get on board with that.
Yeah.
So let's say a photographer or elopement photographer is listening right now and they're like, dang, I need to get my planning together. I need to get my automations together. Like, what's your advice for what they should start with first?
I would say probably starting with the workflow, kind of imagining how you want a couple to experience their experience with you, basically. See how you want them to feel at each stage of the process. Really consider what kind of questions they're asking at the time, how they might be feeling, what you can do to get ahead of things and kind of implementing in your workflow how you can get ahead of that. So, like after they book, and they are obviously going to feel excited, but they're also going to be like, oh my gosh, we're actually doing this, and kind of overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of like send them a little guide and ease their worries and give them something to be excited about, like give them the
Mm-hmm.
inspiration and things to think about. And then, like, every step of the way, just kind of consider what they're worried about and get ahead of it and write down the workflow of how you want them to experience it. And then you can kind of build from there. So, what emails need to be sent when in that workflow, what questionnaires you want to attach to each step, and then automating it is the easy part.
Yeah. And I feel like the hardest part's probably not just the automations, because you can do that easily in Dubsado.
Yeah.
I know you use Honeybook, but like a lot of people get worried about the emails.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice on like how to write these emails? Probably just
Yeah.
get them done.
I mean, yeah, that is the like copy is always a struggle because it's just so time consuming. But always kind of using your voice. If you're like struggling finding your voice, I know I actually went through my past couples reviews and what they said about me. Like I take really good notes on consult calls and stuff. And like even like planning calls that I've had in the past, the more you have, the more you'll kind of know like the common questions of what people are asking and how they're feeling at the stages. If you're getting like text messages of a bride panicking or something, that's a good indication to write that down and avoid it in the future, like get ahead of it before they're panicking about
Mm-hmm.
that thing. But then also kind of like finding my voice and like words that I say often and like what
Mm-hmm.
I would say in person. And I would write that out and then just kind of like create it into an email. And then adding in like what the next steps are. Each email will tell them what comes next. It's never like a this email. And then they're like, okay, what now? It's like, you do this questionnaire and then you'll get another email with the call link. You schedule this call link, we'll talk on this day. It's always like one after another, and just kind of like create your emails that way.
I love that. Yeah. You always like are just, instead of them being, okay, now what? Now what are we doing? You're prepping them for the next step so that they're prepared.
Yeah.
And they know what they need to do on their end. And the whole fact that your inquiry process is like automated is amazing.
Yeah.
Because people aren't having to wait to hear back from you and schedule things. I'm sure that that really just like expedites.
Yeah.
That a word?
Expedites.
Everything expedites.
I know what you mean.
Everything.
Yeah.
Expediates. But anyway, so how do you like keep track of all of this though? Because I'm sure like you need to know where your clients are at, where your couples are at, where they are in the automation process. How do you track all of that?
I definitely like to see all of it in like one way. I know HoneyBook has the pipeline, which I move my couples down, but I also have an Excel sheet that organizes all of the couples of each year. So it'll have like their name, their date, the package, the amount that their package is, and then it'll have a little like checklist across. So each stage is a little column in Excel, and when they do it, I check it off. So the first stage is the elopement guide. If they got that, check it off. And then the next stage is the questionnaire. Did they fill it out? Check it off. And then the next stage is our planning call. Did we have that yet? Check it off. Did they get their location guide? Check it off. So then I can see like a whole overview of everybody for that year and where everyone is at. And it's kind of like a visual of like who needs like a kick in the butt and like who is all set to go and what I need to do. And this also helps with like back end stuff that aren't on HoneyBook, like your permits, like submitting for permits, what dates that they're submitted, or like wedding permits. So I have like for BLM land, I have like the letter of intent, and I have the ceremony permit, and then I have my photo permit, whatever each one kind of like needs, and then like vendors if they're booked, and then just little things that I need to think about in the process. And it's constantly growing. I always think of things that I need to add to it too. Especially I added some things at the back end process of asking for feedback, asking for reviews. And then I also send like a questionnaire at the end so that I could put them on my blog. So I have a whole workflow after the fact as well. So yeah, having that is
that's
nice.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love having that kind of like bird's eye view of everything and knowing some of the process isn't automated, or maybe a couple is dragging their feet, and being able to know when to intervene. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to planning an elopement. And that's why we get paid the big bucks, right? Because you're not just showing up to someone's elopement day that they planned. You're actually taking them through this process. You're making sure that you're doing it legally by getting permits, all that kind of stuff. And you're not dropping the ball on anybody's experience with working with you. And that's why you really get to charge these higher prices and plan these more epic elopements, is because you have this all dialed in. And for the people listening, I mean, Karen, she's dropping in all these emails about like what to pack and all that stuff. And I'm sure that you created those after planning a lot of elopements and being like, wow, at this stage, I get asked this question a lot.
That's definitely how it went. Like when I first made my workflow and automated it, it was a lot smaller than what it is right now. So it does not have to be this elaborate workflow right off the bat. It can start like the very foundation of your workflow. And as you plan more, you'll notice what is needed and you can add it in as you grow. And then I've been photographing elopements for, I think, 3 years now. I don't know. I think I'm over 50 elopements now, which is crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
I know. I don't know the exact number, but I do know it's over 50. But yeah, it's crazy to me. And after you photograph that many, like your workflow is going to look a lot different than mine if you haven't done that many. So don't get too stressed and overwhelmed thinking about all the things that you need to add in. Just do the very bare minimum to make sure everyone has the best experience, the same experience, and you're not overwhelmed or using up all your time.
Yeah. And just think of the tasks that you're repeating over and over and over again that you can automate so that you're not having to remember and have all these things swirling around in your brain. Like, oh, did I send the questionnaire? Did I send the Calendly link?
Yeah.
Did I do the permit? Did I do this?
Exactly.
The more you have it automated, the less stuff you just have in your brain, the less tasks you're sitting down and doing, and the more fun that you can have, the more that you can profit in your business. Karen, you're like a great example of how powerful it is to really focus in on one location,
Yeah.
especially one that's local to you. That's really where you can profit and where you can really streamline and automate stuff and really kind of like not have to do that much work because you know everything so well. And you're probably driving home at night, that kind of stuff. So this is a really great example of how being an authority and an expert in one location can help your business kick butt.
Yeah. My first year, I was doing all different locations. So when I took on all of those elopements, a lot of them were in Utah, which I love Utah. I love photographing in Utah. But I was taking on more than I should have. I was gone away from my family more. I was spending a whole lot more money on hotels and even flights sometimes because that drive can get a lot after a while. And gas and, all those things. And I wasn't profiting as much. I was working twice as hard, being away twice as much and making less. So when I pivoted this year, specifically, I did 90% in Sedona. I only have 2 Utahs this year on purpose because I don't want to give it up completely. I love photographing there, but I'm profiting way more this year. And I took on less elopements. So less elopements, more profit just by doing the niche of Sedona.
I love that. You're just such a great example of so many different things. Being a mom, growing your business with a newborn, which is crazy,
he was a newborn.
And a toddler.
A newborn and a 3-year-old is where I started this business. And it was really hard. It was a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings, a lot of taking advantage of nap times. It was really tough, but I made it through. I knew what really helped was focusing on the right things. So I did a lot of courses in the past and learned some things, but it was like, what's going to give me the actual results and what do I need to focus on right now? Because all the information was like information overload. And I think honing in on what's actually going to change my business trajectory really helped. So
focusing on the right stuff and the right work.
Yeah.
I love it. I think that you're such a great example of so much stuff. And all those moms or wannabe moms out there, you can make it work. And you did have a season of hustling.
Oh yeah, I did.
And you learned some hard lessons along the way, but now you're seeing those results and that hard work was worth it.
Totally.
So I love seeing that. So where can people who want to follow your education and your photo journey, where can they find you?
Probably on Instagram is the easiest. My education account is at Karen Castor. And then my photography account, if you want to follow my photos, is Karen Castor Photo.
Awesome. Yeah, if you want to see some beautiful Sedona desert stuff, definitely follow Karen.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Karen.
Yes, thanks for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. And hopefully there's a bunch of people out there feeling inspired about their workflow and making it easier.
Hopefully.
See you next time. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Stoked with Megan McPhail. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring content, check us out on Instagram at Stoked with Megan McPhail. And to learn more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you quit your 9-to-5, visit my website at meganmcphail.com. I hope this leaves you feeling stoked. See you next week.